HR is a great career for longevity. It's a great career for transferable skills. Performance is recognised based on merit and people are rewarded based on merit.
We want to get the most out of people, but we want it to be fair.
So that's why performance management is very important.
No matter who you're performance managing, it needs to be consistent.
It's the foundation of an organisation.
In a concise way, what's the opposite of micromanagement? Is there a word for that? Melissa, welcome to Martian Logic. We've been trying to set up this meeting for a few weeks now, and with the Christmas break and everything, we finally made it. We're sitting here, and we want to talk today about performance management. So we'll see how the conversation goes.
Yeah.
But first, maybe do you want to just introduce yourself, give people an idea of what you've been doing in the last sort of 10 years in your career?
Yeah, absolutely. So first of all, HR is my genuine passion.
Mm-hmm.
I love it. I've been predominantly focused in the blue collar, heavy industrial space, so
Sure.
manufacturing,
Mm-hmm.
construction,
Yeah.
transport, logistics.
Yes.
So working with corporate, blue collar, white collar, so a real good mix.
Very challenging environment.
Yeah, so
Mm.
highly unionized.
Yeah.
A very competitive environment,
Mhm.
and I really do like that kind of fast-paced
Well, if you can
environment.
succeed in that environment, you can succeed everywhere, as they say, right? Yeah.
Well, it's good for definitely a good training ground for the career,
Absolutely.
and that's why I recommend it to people trying to get into the HR space.
Mhm.
That it's a really good environment because you'll just be thrown with so many different challenges.
Yeah.
So kind of that's been my focus for the last 13, 14 years. But I like to keep myself busy and doing different projects.
Mhm.
I've written 2 different books,
Mm-hmm.
one to help people find
Yeah,
jobs.
I saw
'cause-
that. We'll talk about your book in a minute. I'll grab the book. Maybe, Chris, do you want to help us? The book is sitting on my desk. You can just grab it for me, please. Sorry about that, folks. So, yeah, the book was really good. I went through it a little bit, and it was quite clear from the book that, you recommend HR to young professionals. Maybe while I've got you now, does that stem from? Why do you recommend that to an 18-year-old thinking about what do I want to do and what should I be doing?
Yeah. No, that's a really good question. So when I was going,
That's the book, by the way, folks. It's a good book, definitely for young people that thinking of going into HR. 100% recommend it.
thank you. The reason I wrote is when I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do with my career, there weren't a lot of Australian-based resources out there. They were very American.
Mm-hmm.
And, when you're going through uni, you're just trying to discover what exactly you want to do. So
Mhm.
I took up some electives, some were HR electives. And from there, I really started to understand, look, this is really interesting, but there's nothing really out there. So that's kind of where I started writing my first book. But this second book is very good for someone who wants to understand what HR is all about, but also if you're a manager and you're experiencing
Yep.
challenges, you can also pick up this book because
100%.
it's got lots of different details in there. It takes you through employee relations, performance management, the Fair Work Commission, safety, workers' comp. So it's very detailed and it's Australian. So
Okay.
it's very practical,
Yeah.
very pragmatic. And if you're a leader who's trying to do better or improve or put things in place to really build a really positive culture, it's
Yeah.
definitely a good book.
Yeah, good on you.
Yeah.
And so the question, though, about why you would recommend HR as a career to a young person, I mean, that's a big thing for anybody to be able to claim
Yeah.
they would do that. Why would you do that? Why do you think it's a good career?
So it's very transferable. So if you're thinking about longevity, I mean, so we're all challenged. Technology is just changing at such a rapid pace. I mean, you're the perfect guy to talk to that, not myself,
Sure.
but you've got the introduction of artificial intelligence. But
Mhm.
so the workforce will change, it will evolve, but still you can't remove people. There's always going to be people. So organizations, the foundation of an organization, a successful organization is the people.
Culture and people.
Culture and
yeah,
people. I mean, you
yeah.
would understand that, companies are made off the back of good people, good leadership. If you have someone at the helm of a ship and they haven't got the right direction, vision, or, they haven't put great people around them, it really makes the difference.
Did you sort of indirectly imply, it's like, it was really interesting. Did you sort of directly imply that with technology, with AI taking over so many roles, one thing or one of the things that they cannot replace is that person who's looking at the people and culture and people and improving it and fine tuning it. Is that what you
Absolutely.
actually meant indirectly as well?
Yeah,
That's so cool. I never thought about that.
because it's the personal touch.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't replace having a roundtable discussion like this
Yes.
in a boardroom, whatever type of
It is
session.
square, but it is round like
Round like.
conversation.
Yeah. So
On
you
a
know what
square
I mean?
table.
Absolutely. So you can't ever replace that
Yeah.
type of interaction.
Yes.
We can use different mediums like Teams, Zoom calls, whatever, but at the end of that phone call is going to be in person. You just can't replace that.
Yeah.
So you need people in HR to help coach, to help drive those positive interactions, because at the end of the day, a company is also there to make a profit, make money.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a direct link to people who are highly engaged, they're more productive, and that comes from a majority of the engagement comes from the relationship they have with their manager. So if you have a poor manager in place, it can absolutely wipe out a team. It can crumble an organization. So that's why performance management is very, very important.
Come back to that. Yeah. Okay.
But
Okay.
generally speaking, HR is a great career for longevity. It's a great career for transferable skills. So a lot of people in HR, you need to have that interpersonal skills.
Mhm.
You shouldn't join HR if you
Yep.
don't like people.
Yes. And that's super transferable. 100%.
Absolutely.
100% transferable, that aspect of it. Yep, I
It
agree.
is. And we see a lot of HR people going to COO roles. They can always go into operations or sales
Yes,
because they
yes.
understand how to hold a difficult conversation. And when it comes to a sales pitch or a negotiation, HR people know how to do that.
And to your point now, you made me think, Melissa, thanks to you, I'm thinking even, you people, everyone, I'm pretty sure professionals would have been sort of noticing over the last 20 years the rise of the so-called business partner, HR business partner, right?
Yeah.
Not as if it hasn't been happening for years, but maybe that name started to be sort of developed in the last 20 years. So to your point, you're getting this HR person to really get to understand in depth that division, that business unit, that manager and their team and what they actually do, how they can maximize the productivity and the profitability, and everybody wins from that. I mean, what's better than that for you to become a business person if that's what you want to transfer into eventually? So I can see what you mean more and more now.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a great career, and there's a lot of different options out there. If you want to specialize, you can go into OD, training development, whatever. If you want to stay general, organizational development.
Okay.
So that's where you focus on succession mapping, skills mapping.
Yeah.
So it's a very kind of niche specialization of HR. So there's lots of different career options, and different options suit different personalities as well, and the different energy levels you have. If someone out there sees themselves as they love people, they want to work with people, but they prefer the analytics, well, they can go into HR reporting and analytics, workforce planning.
Okay.
So many different
options. It has to be something negative that you want to warn people about. So if you're a blah, or if you don't have a blah, you shouldn't do it. Come on, there has to be something like that.
Well, you need to have patience and compassion.
Okay.
So you need to be able to lead with compassion, because look, as a HR professional, it can be very easy for someone to fall into the trap of being desensitized and seeing people as numbers. I've seen it. COVID was a real test for a lot of people out there. You had to make decisions on who keeps their job, who doesn't keep their job. They can be very desensitizing for people. But it's important to always have kind of a baseline of compassion and empathy and understanding that these are people. These are people's livelihoods.
Yep.
So when you make a decision about whether they should stay, have a job, be promoted, you need to remember that those people have families and that's their livelihood. So there always needs to be that personal aspect to it.
HR as a career to young people, young professionals that are at that sort of point in their career and in their life. What should I do? And I really liked what you said. I really liked it in terms of the longevity of their career.
Yeah.
But also transferable. If they want in 2, 3, 4, 10, whenever they want to move into something else, they're going to have a myriad of possibilities, and they will bring with them probably 80% of everything they learned. So that's really amazing. Okay, I want to talk to you now, sort of performance management, but really, as we sort of talked off before the recording a little bit, we want it to be not about a product. The whole paradigm of why performance management. What's this all about? Is that a good idea? Where, how can it help a business or the community of that business, meaning the employees and the shareholders and the clients, potentially the entire ecosystem that come? How can it come in and help with that? So, what is performance management? How would you define it yourself if there was any definition? Not necessarily there is, but how would you define it in a minute, let's say?
The way I define it is trying to put it within the context of the bigger picture.
Sure.
So if you have an organization and you want to be, say, performance driven or results driven, then that means that everyone is held accountable to deliver on performance. Performance is recognized based on merit and people are rewarded based on merit. So there needs to be a clear connection based on what behaviors you're trying to drive. So once you've established that, then you go, right, who isn't meeting that criteria? And it needs to be a fair and consistent approach. So performance management is about driving the right behaviors and then holding people to account who aren't meeting the values and the behaviors expected of them. And that is broadly applied to how people behave as a leader. And then, so you've got the knowledge, you've got the skills aspect, and then you have the deliverables. So kind of it takes all that into consideration, brings it all together.
That's really, really interesting, Melissa, what you said. That's really interesting. Let me see if I can, not necessarily I'm trying to summarize it, but just want to repeat to see if you agree with me about what you said, but also trying to explain it in a sense how important what you said is, like to make it that framework for what we're going to talk about. Then we can sort of slice and dice that into different areas. So what you're saying is you're trying to build a framework in that performance management system. It doesn't even have to be proper software. It could be a bunch of Excel spreadsheets and whatever, right?
Yeah.
So we're not trying to sell any software here or talk about the software. We're talking about the paradigm. It needed to be a framework because that, then correct me on that, Melissa, why I'm saying framework, because you talk about fairness, because that framework needs to apply to everyone.
Absolutely.
Meaning even when I'm holding the managers themselves accountable, I've got to use the framework they built. So the managers use a framework to the employees, and I go and use maybe something else with them.
That's right.
So that's why it needs to be a framework that can be reproducible, easily reproducible, and it's got guideline, as in it needs to be the same. It needs to be. People can't go outside it. It limits people to be stuck with the same standards and the same kind of things, right?
Yeah.
That's number one.
Yes.
Which is thanks to what you said that brought that to my mind. And that's the fairness aspect of it. And then you're saying is something that's really, for me, is very, very important in terms of when I think about this is how we get the most out of people. I think maybe I'm not using the exact words, but we want to get the most out of people, but we want it to be fair, right?
That's right.
Okay, maybe you build on that. How
that's a great summary. So that's exactly what I guess. So you need to have a foundation in terms of performance management as a term can have a negative connotation to it. People say performance management, they think about termination, warnings.
Got it.
So what I'm trying to say is performance management needs to be explained in the bigger picture around organizations. They usually have their values, what they're trying to achieve. And if that's really, really clear around what's expected of the leaders, what's expected of the employees.
Did you say their values and what they are trying to achieve?
Yeah. So what's their vision? What's the objectives?
The values is the same or something different? Values and the commercial objectives? Or
yeah, they can be separate and they could be put together in terms of what are we trying to achieve culturally. So it could be a mix of qualitative and quantitative.
For example, it might be a completely free of charge school, for example. Their values is actually part of the mission of what they're trying to achieve. They don't have a commercial objective in a sense. You're right. Yeah, sure.
Yeah, it's really different depending on what organization. So performance management, it needs to be derived from those key aspects. And once you have that in place, it makes it a lot easier for decisions to be made. If there's, say, an employee and they're struggling with something or delivering on a piece of work, what's the framework we're going to use? Okay, one of the values is we treat people with compassion. maybe the first thing the manager asks is everything okay? Maybe they haven't been open and their partner just passed away. There's so many different things to consider. So if leading with compassion is, say, one of the values, then when it comes to performance management, it makes it very clear and a lot easier to go through those motions.
So right.
So, and then it becomes less of a more negative conversation. It becomes about, well, what can we do to help you uplift your performance? Is there anything impacting your performance? It could be a whole array of different things.
So much going in my mind. This is
Yeah.
such an unbelievable conversation. I feel I can talk for 100 hours about it. This is so interesting. So, okay, a company pays someone to work for them, a professional.
Yeah.
We're talking about people, in my industry. So let's make it niche about us in a sense to make the conversation more of a value based on real thing instead of being too theoretical.
Sure.
You can imagine, Melissa, the people that work for us, 100K is probably minimum. We're a company of between $100,000 and $3,000.
Yeah.
Very well paid, top professionals in the tech world, whether it's the sales guys, the account managers, the marketers, the developers, etc.
Yeah.
And so with those group of people, they're getting paid well, certainly competitively above market share, market value. What we, from the company point of view, we want to make sure that we are getting the most out of them. What does that mean? And is that really short-sighted? Is that really too selfish for a company to say that? I will give you the microphone to rip through it. But so I'm just trying to speak loudly in my brain what's going on as a CEO of these amazing group of people.
Yeah.
We want to get the most out of them because I feel even are morally responsible to do, because they want to succeed. They want to be the best they can. They don't want to, in 2 years' time, say, what a waste of time working for Martian Logic. I should have actually been here and I'm still there. I was not pushed hard enough. I could have been better. I should have been now being paid worth 1.5% to where I'm at now had I been pushed and been able to do different things, right?
Yeah.
So you can argue that's one valid argument. That's not everything clearly, but that's a valid argument.
Yeah.
Or one consideration that we need to consider, right? So that's, we're morally obligated as a company to make sure we get the most out of them. They can be the best they can be at their job because they win, the shareholders win, and their families win. Their families want them to be the best they can be because they want to see them happier. They want to see them more employable. They want to see them earning more, but not necessarily going to make them the happiest. So, so when you're talking about stakeholders, that someone like myself is looking at performance management, to me, the stakeholders are the well-being of the employee, and I'll let you sort of elaborate on what that is, and we'll go through it. You've got the shareholder interest, my shareholders, the well-being of the employee, and the clients. Maybe there's the environment, maybe there's a couple of stakeholders out there, but maybe let's just focus on those. That's the key three things. The environment, you can argue, is important as well.
Yeah.
So maybe four. And so I believe, what you said sort of is really cool. You're saying, if you look at these four stakeholders, if you think about what you're expecting from these employees, and the performance management is about, what you manage the expectation to make sure they succeed, they actually deliver on what they expected to do. So the clarity about the expectation is probably as important as the performance management, right? You can't performance manage someone and they don't even have a clear guidelines about what they're expected to be and where to be at a certain point in time, right?
That's exactly right. And if you don't tell someone that they're not meeting the expectation, you can't expect them to read your mind either. So it needs to be very clear to all parties involved what the expectation is. And I think that's where a lot of people fall down.
And what is that? Is that job description? How do you make sure that is clear?
Yeah.
How do you ensure it's everybody agrees that it's clear? What does that mean? It's a job description they sign on?
Well, there's a lot of different facets. So if there's a particular strategy you have, so you mentioned shareholders, you mentioned clients, employees. So if there's a particular strategy and you want to say, grow the revenue line by 20%, and you've got all the objectives and which roles contribute to that or drive the revenue versus, got different roles that contribute different ways,
Absolutely.
how that feeds into the overall strategy. And then there needs to be some transparency that I'm not recommending you need to open book it and say, here's all the P&Ls. But to a certain way, if people understand what the bigger picture is, it helps them feel like they're contributing to something bigger than just their own job or coming in, plugging in.
Sure, yeah.
So that really helps. And then you have the technical pieces that HR offer. You mentioned job descriptions. Job descriptions can be helpful, but it's not something that you can solely rely on. You've got to do all these different pieces to make sure it all comes together to help you drive the performance. And you also touched on career progression, because you want employees to stay with you, and you want them to feel like they're progressing and that, being with the company wasn't a waste of their time, it was of value. So, having a very clear career path, or in your mind, how long someone would stay in a position before they go stagnant, is important as well for you to manage the workforce and to make sure people remain engaged. So it's really complex and it's hard for people to get right, but if they get it right, it just pays dividends.
Okay, we've got plenty of time to talk about it. So let's one of those sort of little things that need to be understood that contribute to that strategy of the best performance management and for a particular company or a group of individuals is this whole notion of is there a word in HR or in the business world, I've never researched it, I've never come across it, that describe in a concise way what's the opposite of micromanagement? Is there a word for that?
That's a good question.
Maybe there isn't, but let's call it the opposite of micromanagement, yeah?
Oh, yeah,
Sure.
okay.
So if you were to describe the opposite of micromanagement, I personally would describe it, and I would love for you to describe it, I would describe it as allowing people, employees, giving them room. In that room is where they do some experimentations, some research, some trial and error in their own environment, where they're not necessarily ready to share. They want to make some stuff up. Even when it becomes all public, they're actually trying it in the real world, meaning implement it with an agile with the clients, and it turned out to be even bad. Even that can be included. So allowing them to make mistakes, giving them room is, in my opinion, if I was to describe what's the opposite of micromanagement, it would be that. How would you describe it?
Yeah, the freedom to fail, really. It's the
opposite of micromanagement.
I would say it would be one part of it. I mean,
sure.
Micromanagement is, some people say it's when you've got toxicity or you've got a poor manager.
It doesn't have to be done based on toxicity. It could be that manager doesn't know any better. He just want to help that person. Well, funnily enough, I was going to ask you in a funny way. Myself, I was a parent. Have you been a parent?
Not yet.
No? Cool.
One day.
Yeah, sure. So, for example, we laugh about that as parents, the whole helicopter parenting.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
I mean, I don't think there's any difference. And what I mean by that manager could be doing it from a good heart.
Good intentions.
Good
Absolutely.
intentions, like a parent. Yeah. They don't know they're doing that. They're riding that helicopter above that kid as that kid is walking in life, trying to use a laser gun to destroy any obstacle in front of them, so they don't have to deal with the obstacles. Yeah. And then that person becomes 13, they go to high school, and they get destroyed by the real world because they've been protected all
Bubble
that time
wrapped,
by the helicopter right in front of them, guiding them and making sure their life is so smooth. So that manager could be doing it from a really good intention. So not necessarily toxicity. I don't think maybe that's that relevant here. We're just talking about micromanagement, the style of managing people with the best of intention versus what? What is the opposite of micromanagement? Have a go at it.
Yeah, and that's what I think. If people understand that they have the ability to experiment and try things and fail, and it's going to be okay.
Give them a bit more room.
So give them that tolerance and say, look, I'm giving you, and I don't want to sound cliche, but a lot of people say we want to empower people. And to an extent, that is about empowering people to go out there, take a risk, and let them know that if for whatever reason it doesn't work, it's okay, but at least you've tried something new.
So you seem to think that's the most important aspect of opposite of micromanagement. Another aspect that comes to mind?
It is important, particularly based on what you're trying to say and where you want to go with your company and allowing the employees to develop new things. I think that's really important.
Sure. Oh, there's a reason I would love for us to just explain roughly from what we know.
Yeah.
what's the opposite of micromanagement. There's a reason. You'll see why. So if we agree that a key thing to being a non-manager
Mm-hmm.
is to give people room. It's that in itself is an interesting concept. If I can just stay on that for a minute, because for example, one of the important things in our culture, I always say to people, is for people to be comfortable to say, I don't know anything about this. No, I haven't done this before, as opposed to pretending, thinking that, oh, I should know this or whatever, not to feel that pressure at all. So look, believe me, we know what you know and what you don't know. Don't worry, we've hired you not because of how many little technical things you've done.
Yeah.
We hired you, number one, as a person, what you're capable of, what you can do if you want to do something.
Mm-hmm.
And you as a person, your humanity, your potential, your brain power, etc. Not exactly the things you didn't do. Don't worry about that. So we encourage people to say, I haven't done this before, but look, I'll have a go at it. That fearless attitude, but coupled with that transparency and being relaxed about what you know and what you don't know, right?
Yeah.
So therefore, it's a really an interesting overlap between that and between this whole thing of giving them room. So we're having a conversation. We're saying we've got this challenge, as you described it, on a round table,
Mm-hmm.
in a civil environment. A bunch of people, a team is saying we've got this challenge. Someone has to do it. Someone says, "Yeah, I'll have a go at it." So you've got that nice balance between them being comfortable to say, "I haven't done it," and the company allowing them the room to do some
trust.
experimentation. And even if they fail, to say, we really respect that you even put your hand up and said, I'd have a go at it. You failed. What's the plan now? How do we recover from this in the best way possible, etc. I think this is really the best ideal way to work with your employees, right?
Absolutely. And if they feel and they can see that you trust them, they're going to feel more comfortable having a go and putting their
That's
hand
so
up and
cool.
saying, I don't understand, or I've never done this before. Hey, do you mind showing me?
Yeah.
That's where it comes from.
Yes. Yes, that trust, right, which is a big point. We should probably dedicate 15 minutes about this whole trust. And that whole, oh my God, I mean, you're so right. That trust, speaking before about the question of what's the opposite of micromanagement, probably if I was to put one word to your point, to your credit, it would be the trust-based. Oh my God, we found the word that we're looking for.
There it is.
Here we go. Sorry about the noise, guys.
He's excited.
It's a trust-based maybe management style.
Yes. So if it also comes from the manager within themselves and how comfortable they are with their own abilities. So, they internalize their own abilities, and if they don't trust their employees to do a good job, or they think they need to be across everything to be an effective manager, that's where the micromanagement usually stems from. So trust changes things.
Wow. It positively changes that person. It makes them, they want to be better.
Absolutely.
They want to thrive. They want to meet your expectation because you've trusted them. As opposed to the reverse can happen when you micromanagement. Probably they're saying, I'm going to pretend I'm doing my best and I hope I fail just to piss them off because they don't trust me and they are making me unhappy.
You can see that.
It's so incredible.
Yeah, absolutely. And a lot of people, managers, leaders, it's really hard for them to let go. And as they progress throughout their career, unfortunately, a lot of people do get promoted based on their technical expertise rather than their ability to lead or their softer skills.
Yeah.
And so if that gap doesn't close, they go to what's worked for them in the past, and usually that's to be across all the details. But when you're leading a big team and you've got lots of direct reports, you can't be across the details.
No.
You're just your success is based on your team.
Yeah.
So allow them to do what they need to do, trust them to deliver, and if there's any issues, offer your support, help them, coach them, and that's where the difference comes in.
Yep. Okay. I'm going to ask you now a very tough question, philosophical completely.
Okay.
That, I mean,
for it.
you could probably find some answers to that in the Bible or whatever.
Yeah.
As in really philosophical. What's the difference between, take a minute or two, you can make it as concise as possible, or you might want 5-10 minutes to elaborate, take your time, whatever you prefer.
Sure.
What's the difference between a leader and a manager then?
That's always a tricky or challenging question. A lot of people, I think, struggle to differentiate the difference.
Maybe we make it more answerable or more practical to answer. Let's say 3 key differences that you perceive to be the difference between a leader and a manager?
So a manager is someone who's put in a position to supervise or give direction to a group of individuals, however large or small it is. And so it's more, a manager, I think, is defined as just the role that they fill, whereas a leader is more about talking to that empowerment piece. They know what direction they're going in. People trust them. People want to follow them. If you're just a manager, people might not necessarily want to follow you.
So this whole thing of the opposite of micromanagement is more of leadership skills?
It's definitely the leadership qualities. That's the difference.
But because a manager needs to be a leader, we've been talking about them in the context of that manager because it's the same person, but they are maybe, would you say they are leadership skills for a manager? Is that what we're saying here?
And that's what I'm saying is a lot of people get promoted to become a manager,
Yeah,
but they don't have
I
the
agree.
proper skills or soft skills.
I agree.
Because you're not taught how to have difficult conversations, or if an employee comes in and they're crying because they've had a really bad day or someone's passed away, you don't get that training. You don't
Okay.
get that soft
I'm
skills.
still not clear, and I know you have the answer. I'm going to get it out of you. Let's do it this way. 3 things for a manager to have and 3
Yes.
things for a leader to have.
Okay.
Knowing, of course, as we both know, they might be 2 different people or the same person, but 3 traits / practical things, whatever you want them to be, what a manager must have, and 3 things for a leader.
What a leader must have is they need to have empathy. You can't have an effective leader who doesn't have empathy for their employees or for the people. People are human. People make mistakes. They also need to be tolerant. The way I describe it is they're not perfect. And so if people in their team also make mistakes, just give them the tolerance that you'd like to be shown in
So
return.
empathy and tolerance.
Absolutely. Empathy, tolerance. The third one I would say is you need to be able to, the way I describe it is you can't hide behind your title. So you need to earn their respect. People say, I'm the CEO or whatever, I'm a senior director, therefore you need to respect me. But people don't have to work for you. They don't have to stick around. So you need to understand.
Especially talented people. I mean, that's insulting anybody really, but I guess what I meant by talented people, so that's the wrong word to use. I've probably offended a lot of people out there. People who at a particular point in time, in a particular place in the world, they have options.
Absolutely.
When you have options, you don't need to put up with that shit.
Correct. People have options. It's not the old days where you'd stay in a job for 40 years, then you retire. People have options. People move around. So if they're not happy with who they're working for, they'll just pick up their stuff and leave.
So describe it one more time, that number 3, because we talked about empathy and tolerance. And the third one is saying you want the people, as a successful leader, the people working for you or talk to you or trust you, not because you're a certain title.
That's right.
Because you're who you are and they trust that you have their interest at heart.
Absolutely. You've earned their respect through the
And their trust.
integrity and the trust through who you are as a leader.
It's amazing. I'm very happy with that. Thank you. Let's go to a manager, knowing that this could be the same person.
Yes. So a manager, I think I would define differently as more the more technical day-to-day kind of grind. A manager has
Operational thing.
It's more operational. A manager is there to make sure that their team is doing what they need to do, essentially.
Enforcing that job description, so to speak.
Yeah, absolutely. And if people do fall down, help them to deliver or meet their objectives. So that's what they're there for. They're there to make sure that people are working in a cohesive way. If they're managing a team that works with other teams, to be the spearhead to make sure people are collaborating. So it's more the operational aspects, whereas the leadership, I would say, is more the softer interpersonal aspects through that human interaction.
People, just on that point, thank you, Melissa. That's definitely very helpful and makes sense. You hear people saying all the time, people leave because of their manager.
Yes.
As in at least 80% of the time, the number one thing. So, really, is it because of their manager or because of their leader? In other words, even if it's the same person, it's the leadership aspect of that manager.
That's right. That's why people leave. They feel that they're not being recognized for their work. Other behaviors might not be addressed. There might be favoritism. Someone could be getting more overtime than their colleague just because they're mates outside of work. It could be a whole raft of different things, but it's that leadership aspect that if they have inconsistency or they don't treat people fairly or in their view right, that's where it comes from.
Yeah, that's amazing. Okay, all right. So let's see how we can bring this back to performance reviews. Would you like to have a drink?
No, I'm good.
You're good?
Yeah, let's keep going. This is good.
Yeah. With performance management, so we've defined a little bit or talked about the key aspects of a manager and the style of managing people. And let's just say we're doing this right. We're not micromanaging people. We're doing the opposite. You've got a company where we've got the opposite of the micromanager. And we want to implement a performance review system, not a software. We're not talking software system. I use the word system as a repeatable, could be, as I said, a bunch of spreadsheets and Word documents and I don't know, a framework. We want to build a performance management framework that is consistent. No matter who you're performance managing, it needs to be consistent from the fairness point of view. Yeah. What is it that okay, how about we do this? I'm going to cover this point that I've been so dying to talk to you about, because that will be another point of discussion as part of another piece in the puzzle of the performance management. Okay.
Sure.
Someone like myself could say to you, and I know you're not going to probably be 100% happy with it as an HR person, but someone, just, I'm being a devil's advocate.
Yes, go for it.
Different angles.
Yeah.
Might say, look, I'm a good company. I'm not performance managing people. I pay people well. Okay, so a lot of positive things already. And therefore, I'm entitled to be able to view this as, for that particular employee, I want their direct report, person, direct manager, meaning team leader, manager, whatever you want to call it, the person they report to directly, to hold with them a weekly catch-up where they hold them accountable against the following. Very simple, 3 things. And these 3 things come at the assumption of if you commit to your job, if you devote the right level of commitment, meaning if it's 38 hours or 45, whatever the expectation of the hours, if you're doing a really good job with that commitment, you're meeting that and even going even above what's expected. Number 1, and if the focus during those hours is there at a good level, no reason why you cannot therefore complete all your tasks, smash your weekly tasks, your weekly KPIs, right?
Yeah.
If not, if those 2 are correct, and I'm going to repeat, your commitment is good, your focus during that commitment is good, that means something is wrong. If you're failing at your tasks, if you're maybe doing only 75% of the expectation, that means either the bar is too high, we're as a company not giving you the right amount of work for your level of expertise, experience, etc.
Yeah.
Or, there's no or anymore. Something doesn't add up, and that's why it's such a good system. I want on a weekly basis to say, let's talk about this week gone now, how you went with the commitment. How many hours do we feel you put in? Oh, look, I think, let's assume it's a 38-hour contract we're expecting from them. Look, I feel I've done almost 45 this week. Oh, wow, this is fantastic, right? Cool. That's a tick. That's a 5 out of 5. I'm going to rate you on that. That's at the end of that week. It's say 4:30 on Friday. Then, okay, let's talk about the level of focus. Look, I've done my best. As you know, my dog has been sick, and I know that my girlfriend is not working at the moment. She was doing all the work and heavy lifting on that. She took it to the vet. She's been all that, but clearly mentally, I've been very, very uncomfortable and not happy, and that affected my focus. And I want that manager to give them 5 out of 5 on this, because there's a good reason why. So we do want to be that company. We are very empathetic and practical. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I would give them 5 out of 5 because there was a good reason, and they tried their best, and they still committed and trying to get the work done. But things you cannot, unfortunately avoid in life. Some things,
That's
life
right.
comes
Things
in
happen.
and it's got its own agenda, And then we go, okay, considering that, you can see now that your task, you're only going to be scoring, you only completed 75%, but that makes sense. Your focus was probably 60%, coupled with a very solid commitment, you ended up at about 75. That makes sense. But considering all in all, okay, I'm going to actually give you 5 even on your tasks. But I'm going to put that note in here. You only did 75, but considering the situation, as far as I'm concerned, the company thinks you're 5 out of 5 this week on that. I mean, isn't that cool? What else do you, I mean, isn't that, what else do you need to do as a company, and why performance management is too complicated? Isn't it about the commitment and the focus?
Yeah, I mean, those are important aspects for sure. Look, there's lots of different ways that people try to assess performance. I mean, you brought it, you characterized it quite well in terms of the simplicity. But I guess to my point, people aren't simple. So,
example.
So you could have
example why this system is not going to be adequate enough.
No, I think it can. I think that's definitely a good foundation, but it would definitely need to be tailored by organization, by scope of the role. The expectations could change. So if they've been in the role, say, a couple of years, then you'd expect that they could do 100% of what, say, Sally can do as a junior.
Why? Because the bar is raised accordingly. The tasks given to a junior person versus a senior person is completely different.
Yeah, so as long as those type of factors are considered.
Of course.
Yeah,
if the bar is too high, this whole thing is not worth the stuff it's written on. It's
I guess
ridiculous.
What I'm trying to say is I agree with you. As long as the algorithm can take all those type of nuances into account when it comes to assessing one's performance.
Why do you need an algorithm? That's the manager's job.
Yes.
To on a weekly basis set the right expectation for the right person at that point in time in life, and take all the factors, including their expertise, their knowledge, their
any
blah,
projects,
blah, blah, and say, this is what I'm expecting this week.
Yep.
So that's what I mean. And that's why that system will really find out what's going wrong here. It needs to add up.
Yes. But the challenge is, let's say with formal performance reviews, when there's, say, the annual performance reviews, a lot of companies do it. They look at a bell curve to make sure across the board, are people being rated fairly? Some managers, their expectations are higher. They might say, I get it, your dog was sick.
How do you look at...
but then the but comes in, then they go, but you still only did 75, so I'm giving you a 4 and not a 5. So that's when you can have the best template and you can have the best modules.
How do you, looking at the bell curve, can you explain that to people, and why? How do you interpret that in terms of people treated fairly? You said something like that. It's interesting. Can you please elaborate on that?
Yeah, sure. So if there's, say, a formal performance review and it's linked to
a lot of people don't even know
increases.
What formal performance review is versus not formal. What's formal performance review?
Okay. So let's say someone's been doing a job for a year. It's that time of the year. People want increases. Inflation's high. It's time for an increase. How do we decide who gets what increase? So some companies go with the fixed or flat rate. Everyone gets the same, which in my view is not right. Some people put in extra effort. But besides the point, so it's about, well, how do we link that percentage to their performance?
To the reward. So
absolutely.
Reward, yeah.
And what...
And the fairness of
the fairness of it, and it takes into account the manager's feedback. But some managers have high expectations or are more harsh towards others. So you look at a group of workforce. So if you imagine, say, a bell curve, there's always a tail at both ends, and you want to look at, say, I'll get really technical now.
No, it's fine.
Standard deviations and averages. So you expect that the majority of the employees are meeting expectations.
Okay.
So that's the standard. Everyone's meeting expectations. They're doing their job.
Curve,
Yep.
And then you've
so that's
got those
the middle.
areas here.
Yep. Then you've got the other end where you have the outliers, so people not performing.
Yep.
And then you also have the other tail where you've got some people.
To explain it to people, if it was, we're rating, let's say, I don't know, between 1 and 10, you're talking about the outliers on the negative end. The people between, let's say, the 0 and, say, 3.
That's right.
And then you've got the 7 to 10.
Yes.
On the other end, yeah? Okay. And what about those?
And then they're the people who are exceeding expectations. So you might have managers who are really favorable. They think their team is the absolute best. They rate the entire team exceeding expectations. And so you look at all of that and say, well, how do we fairly judge but assess employees' performance and look at, and the bell curve is a guide to see, to make sure that people are assessed correctly, because managers have their own biases, they have their own view of how people are performing. So you want to make sure that you can account for that. And that's why if there's a formal performance management tool in a system or software that can filter through and be used by organizations to sit down and calibrate. So say, look, this person, we have a formal record, they've been disciplined, they've got 2 warnings on their file. Absolutely, they should be in the 0 or the 1. And then if you've got 50 plus people in one manager's team all exceeding expectations, well, I think we need to take a look at that, because we can't, if you've got a budget or you have a certain pool to allocate increases, then how are we going to make sure that's fair, that the true high performers are rewarded and calibrated? So that's what I mean by the bell curve.
You calibrate it by looking at other aspects and facts.
Taking consideration, who's the manager, how do they assess people, what's the standard, what pattern are we seeing? And a great tool, so if you have the framework and the tool, that feeds into this and really it's very helpful.
Such as? How can the tool prevent that from happening to start with?
So if you have a lot of organizations, they use SMART goals. So they set the objectives, they review their progress. It could be biannual, it could be more regular. You suggested weekly, or just as an example. So if they're doing biannual performance review, they'd understand how they're tracking throughout the year. So it's not a surprise to them when they get to the end. But at least that allows a self-assessment process. An employee goes in, says how they think they're going. The manager assess it. They come together. And that a weighting is assessed to each objective to calculate or spit out grade.
I'm assuming that's a standard thing.
It is absolutely. It's absolutely standard.
That will help with
so
reducing those anomalies.
That's saying? Right. Yeah.
How, Melissa?
So if that overall rating is, let's say, 75%, 75% might be that's within the meeting expectations bucket. Someone scored 75 and below, they're not meeting expectations. Anyone higher than 75% is exceeding expectations. So you just set those type of guidelines, and that helps you go, this is where they sit.
Got it. And hence why I was trying to emphasize it's the same system. That consistency to be used everywhere.
That's right.
Is important.
There's lots of different ways to do it.
Very, very interesting. Okay. So you're saying okay, would you have any problem as an HR person for a company like ours to have the team leaders / managers, the person that the employee reports to directly, meaning the person that intimately knows about what they are doing, about their job? They're speaking with them 5 times a day. Yeah, team lead / direct manager. To be holding people accountable in a sense on a weekly basis. And I'm an advocate of this, and I say it, I'm happy to defend the weekly thing, because I feel you're doing them a favor if you do it frequently, because you don't want to wait for them to make, you want all this tool to be a success tool, meaning it's like when we say about our police, you shouldn't be standing just outside the pub, outside the car park of the pub to catch people, if they're been drinking. I would rather, maybe that's the wrong example, but we put signs in Australia about the cameras, the speed cameras, to prevent you from speeding, as opposed to we catch you speeding and, we want to have a trap kind of thing. We would rather we prevent you from speeding than collecting the fines, So you want that to be, and so if you leave it for a month or 2 before you do it, someone might be arguing, this from thinking they are nice to the employee because, oh, that's maybe too stressful every week. But no, in my opinion, they would rather stress a little bit on a weekly basis, but
Yeah.
that's going to keep them in line before it becomes non-correctable. They go on a tangent for too long, hard to swing back into the right direction, right? That's my opinion. I would love for you to comment on that. And then if we can agree this is not a bad idea, then if they sit down with them, because as I said, they intimately know what they've been doing, they've been speaking with them on a weekly basis, 5 times a day, then to say, let's see how you went with the commitment. Let's see how your focus was. Take into account life. Life happens.
Yep.
Both, as a matter of fact, even from the commitment, I was only able to do 30 hours because I had to take my dad to the hospital and blah and blah and blah. And I tried to even do after hours. I worked even at between 9 and 12 midnight on Tuesday to make up for some of that lack of hours, but I could only do 32. I want to give this person 5 out of 5.
Yeah.
You know, like we take all life into account. Yeah.
Yeah.
Commitment, focus. Therefore, then it becomes about task completion. And that's why, you know, so do you have a problem with that being implemented? Do you feel this is a bit too harsh or negative, or do you have any problem with it as an HR practitioner?
No, I don't. Because I think what you said, it's all about the positioning and the communication. So the way you described it to me is the right way. So how you communicate it to the employees if you're going to implement this is the most important thing. It's not there to monitor you. It's not there because we don't trust you. It's there to make sure that there's regular communication and check-ins with your direct manager to make sure everyone understands what's going on and what their expectations are.
Yeah.
So the way you positioned it was perfect.
Yeah.
And that's really important because you don't want them to think that you're big brother. And so how you position it is important. And I think it's just natural. I mean, I've done it when I've had direct reports and I've been managing a team just to have a weekly check-in. That's the way I like to frame it.
So share something with me in that weekly check-in that maybe I haven't discussed or you believe is important. I've never looked at this before. This is just my own thinking with my own team.
Yeah.
We spent a day last week, a team leader from the dev team, a developer, and a team leader of the marketing team, Chris's boss. And we came up with this. So share with me something that you did when you were doing your weekly catch up with your own team.
Yeah, to me it's so I like a conversational casual style. So I ask them if it's a Monday, what do they get up to on the weekend? I want to know them a little bit about them. And then I ask them, what are they working on? What's their priorities? Do they need any help? Are there any roadblocks? So I offer my help and say, what can I help you with? So those are the main things I focus on.
Performance management, that's not measurable. We haven't measured anything yet.
But
we haven't held them accountable yet to remember we're responsible for their career, for their progress and the shareholders' progress.
So whilst we're having this discussion, so we'll have a spreadsheet. It's a WIP or work in progress report, what we're working on.
Yep.
So I let them drive it. This is what I'm working on. These are the priorities. What are the roadblocks? Do you need any help? So it follows that kind of style. But I am recording. I've got my notes, so I know where everything's going on, where we're up to.
But they're not going to know if they're not doing well.
Oh, they can see it.
My question, Melissa, you know, they're going to know, oh shit, I've got 3 out of 5 on this.
Yep.
Because there was no excuse for me and I still only did 30 hours a week.
Yeah. So you can make it transparent. They can see it. You could use it.
Transparent, thank you. That's the word I was looking for, yeah.
You can make it a traffic light system. You know, red is it's really overdue. Or amber, okay, it's a bit off track. Yeah. You need to focus on it. Green, you're done.
I respect you've got your own style of how you do it and talking about the weekend and stuff. I 100% respect that. It's not the point I'm worried about. What I mean is there anything measurable that you feel you can input if I was to implement that system here? Do you feel it's missing something that you would recommend I'll put in here? Outside of the style, which is I fully take on board, that relaxed, positive environment, friendly environment, encouraging environment, not you're here because God forbid you're in trouble or anything.
Yes.
So I respect that and that's a good input. Thank you for reminding me a little bit to chill a little bit about it. We will make sure that's the case. Yeah. Thank you. But is there anything like so-called measurable that maybe I'm missing here?
I mean, I think it's important to keep it as simple as possible. So if you're using a scale out of 5 and
weekly,
focus,
and we're talking about
weekly.
We're being very specific here. It's literally called a weekly catch-up.
Yep.
Friday afternoon. How do you feel it's missing anything?
I think if if it's suiting the purpose that you're after, it can work.
Yeah.
I think it's important to think about the positioning to make sure that the scale or the way that people assess a situation, just kind of like what we said about the dog, or it needs to be very clear to not just the managers or the leaders, but the employees too, so they understand why it's being used.
So I appreciate though your input about to chill a little. I'm going to have three questions here. Number 1 and 2 and 3 are going to be, how's the dog? How's the parents? And how's the partner? And then we move into it.
Yeah.
How about we do that?
Yep, sure.
All right. Thank you.
You're all right.
Awesome. Okay. So we've been, going into it from random angles.
Yes.
Performance reviews, performance management. What is performance management? I'm 100% interested in performance management from the point of view of it's a good company. There's no one evil here. There's no toxic. No one's trying to do the wrong thing. But clearly, we want to be empathetic and we want to reduce. I mean, that's why we hire people like yourself, for example, companies, because we not only we want to be nice and fair to all the stakeholders, fairness, but also, we want to stay legal. We want to minimize any risks that we might be taking in certain practices. Yeah. And so, you've got all these considerations for a performance review. I want it to be from that point of view, but mostly the number one thing is for me to be a success plan. And if I was to summarize what that means, to make sure, meaning I want it to be an instrument to make sure people succeed, to be the best they could be at their job, right? And if I was to summarize what that means, it's to hold them accountable. Because you know what I say to people, you can be a great company and do a fantastic job at recruiting, meaning you're hiring the right person for that right company at this point in time, which is almost impossible to be good at. But let's say you're even good at. So all that is good. You get that really good person, the perfect person for the role at this point in time. They start working for you. This is all good, but still, this is only 60, 70%. If you don't, and provided all the clarity about what they're supposed to do. That's the one thing. You got the right people, and you're a good company, and you are very clear on what they need to achieve. Still, not even 60% good enough, because the big factor here, and this is a tiny thing to do, but it has a huge impact, in my opinion, is hold them accountable against what you and them agreed their role is. And that's that whole weekly catch-up thing, to make sure it's adjusted early enough. Because the best of us, in every meaning of the word, I say the best, not just the best at what they do, as a humans as well, if we're not held accountable, we lose the plot. We just can't find the motivation sometimes. The mind is too powerful. The mind convinces us to do shit that we shouldn't be doing. If we don't feel, oh, damn, Friday 4 p.m. is going to happen soon and it's only 2 days. How am I going today? Well, that's unfortunately how we function. It's not about assuming someone is bad. This is us, in my opinion. I'm a big believer in the separation between knowing that there's two separate things here, the real you and the mind. The whole science, philosophy of mindfulness, which is, I'm not sure if you believe in it or you know about it, the whole thing about the mind. The mind is a very powerful instrument, can be very negative thing, convince you to be doing things that you shouldn't be doing. Holding people accountable can really make you stronger to fight that mind. So I really say it in every positive way, starting from myself. As a CEO, I still have a board to report to shareholders. I cannot be the best CEO if I don't have accountability and people holding me against what I promised. So can you comment on that?
Yeah, I agree with everything you've said. I think these weekly catch-ups is kind of like, I was thinking about an aeroplane 1 degree off their route. They'll end up in a different country on the wrong side of the world. So it's kind of like...
Brilliant example.
That's the one I came up with. So if you're keeping the compass true north and you're having those regular those catch-ups, you're preventing the tragedy or it becoming uncorrectable and them ending up in the wrong place. So I understand what you're saying. And sometimes when it comes to people, it's got to be commercially balanced too. So I've mentioned a lot about empathy,
Yes,
but
please.
sometimes you have someone who just does enough to get by and they're really upsetting people because they've got the wrong attitude or they're social loafing, slacking off, whatever. And from a technical point of view, there might be some risks if you were to say let them go. But if they're bad for culture, if they're bad for the working environment, they're not good for where you're going, sometimes you have to make a bit of a commercial decision and weigh up those risks and work out, well, this person's just not right for us. And that forms a part of performance management. That forms a part of where these tools can really assist. If you've got a consistent metric and they're just doing enough, but there's all these other factors to consider. They're upsetting people. They're causing drama. They're gaslighting people. So those are the other factors where you look at it holistically and you go, no, it's worth the risk. This person is not right for us. And then you take a different path to say exit them or do whatever you need to do. So that's what I'm saying. It's not an easy thing. It takes a lot of finesse. But what you're saying is right. I agree with you. So it's important to understand what you're trying to do, how you're going to measure it, and then hold people to account. And that's important.
Brings us an interesting topic, even from speaking to someone like yourself. It made it a little bit even clearer in my mind about the role of HR if I was to be arrogant enough and rude enough to try and summarize it. It's such a broad thing, HR, yeah? But I'm going to be, as I said, take the risk of still summarizing it. It seems to be, to me, that HR, as I said, in a very crude way, summarized as you creating clarity about what are the responsibilities of both the companies and the employees, and holding people and the company responsible again. For example, when we talk about policy, we hear a big part of an HR person is, I'm writing policies. I've been working on this project for the last month, trying to write a policy to do about a blah, blah, blah for the company. So what is that? And you think about performance reviews, we're holding you accountable, but we cannot hold you accountable if there was no enough clarity. So you need the clarity. That's the policies and the communication of the policies and the level of engagement of people with the policies, because sometimes at least with big companies, even small companies, you can create policies, but no one gives a shit about them. People not even motivated to read them. They don't respect the company or the policies or the people communicating them. They don't even read them. So you got to have policies, make sure people are engaged with those policies, and then hold them against it. I mean, this is at high level. You get the best outcome for the company, and you keep the company as well safe in terms of minimizing the legal risks as well. We told them, they read it. We told them you can't do this. They signed on it, and we held them accountable. But look, we gave them even a bunch of times. We worked with them for over 6 months. Here's all the evidence, and they were aware they're not upholding that policy. We had to let them go. So I mean, really, at high level, it's such an amazing business instrument. Why would they call it HR? This is business, at the heart of business. What the hell is HR and business? They're the same.
Yes, that's my view.
How can a company be run without all of that? I mean, that's the fuel of any company.
Absolutely. Like, it's if people understand, and a lot of organizations do understand the value of HR, but if you've got leaders who understand their role and how they manage people themselves, HR becomes they become less of the doing and doing the work for them. And if you have the right frameworks in place, like what you're suggesting, it becomes a lot easier for everybody. There's role clarity. People understand the expectations. They're not surprised if they're told, hey, you're not performing, because they're told on a regular basis.
Yep.
And they understand what they're getting measured against. It makes it just easy.
Yep.
So
You're an adult. You knew what you need to do. You've made decisions, and we need to make now decisions.
yes. And if you've got really good compliance or policies in place, it makes it a lot easier if for whatever reason they go off course.
Okay, that's really interesting. So I had a really interesting point, but it just escaped me. I can't remember what it was. You know, stemming from what we've been talking about, the role of HR and
Yeah.
policies and
I think there's also a lot of misconceptions around
Mhm.
what HR actually
Yep.
do. And I think that stems from the fact that a lot of what we manage or we work on is confidential. And so people can be very opposed to speaking to HR, or if you walk into an office and the culture's not very good, oh, you spoke to HR, you're in trouble. They think you're the police officer when really you're not there. You're there
Yeah.
to be that
Mm.
that voice of the employees, but also you walk that kind of fine line between making sure that we're facilitating the company's goals, but also we're looking after employees at the same
Okay.
time.
I remember the question.
Okay, good.
Can I interject a little? So,
Go for it.
so from what you know, again, guys, you know, HR is such a broad thing. You need 150 years of experience for you to claim that you know how to practice HR in every industry, in every area of HR. It's such a broad thing.
Yeah.
But from what you know, Melissa, in every humble way, what if there's a company that says, look, I don't know, 100 people, and they go, look, we're busy, we can only do one type of performance review. What would that be? What do you think the most, let's say, the top 3 most important performance reviews, yeah, that you recommend a company should do?
I think it's what you're working towards. It's having that regular check-in or catch-up.
If
So
there was one, it would be that.
it would be
If
that.
there was 3,
So that would be the first one. You just can't.
yeah.
The value of going for a coffee, sitting down, going, what do you have? What do you need to do? Very important. The second one, in terms of performance management, I mean, we've touched on the framework. That's important. Mentioned job descriptions as well. But it's important to have role clarity. There's nothing worse when you've got people tripping over each other and doing the same things, or spending so much time and resources, but another team has already done it. So there needs to be that type of openness to understand what everyone's there for, what they're meant to do, and what they're supposed to focus. So that's really important as well. So that's,
Okay. You know, for example, you mentioned formal performance review, which is, I'm assuming, every 6 months or every 12 months, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Then you've got weekly catch-up
Mm-hmm.
as a performance review, as we discussed, as a mechanism to keep people on track
Yep.
before it's too late. And then it could be, I don't know, they do the peer reviews. There's a 360-degree reviews, and blah, blah. There's so many types.
So many different.
So I might have not asked you the question correctly enough, as in I wasn't clear on my question. I apologize. Let me ask it again. Knowing that these are all these types of reviews, and a company says, the CEO says, we're too busy, we don't want to spend too much time on performance reviews. Give me one that we have to do. We'll do that one.
Okay.
What would that be?
It would be. Now I'm going to ask you a question back.
Absolutely.
So it depends on what the purpose of the performance review is. So if the
The
purpose,
CEO has no idea, and the HR consultant insisting you've got to do performance reviews, and he says, "Oh, bugger it. Okay, we'll do one only. No bullshit. I don't want to
Just
do
one.
3 or 4. Give me one performance reviews that we have to do. I'll get all the managers to do it. Fine."
yeah. So
What would that be? Weekly catch up, the yearly thing. What would that be?
I'll
So
say
we can
weekly.
we can then zoom on that a little.
Weekly, at least if you're going to do, if you're going to pick one formal mechanism, then you want to make sure that you're across what's happening regularly rather than once a year.
So it
or
would be the
twice a
weekly
year.
one.
Weekly one.
Good on you. I totally agree with that. Okay. In saying that, we talked a fair bit about the weekly one.
Mm-hmm.
How about if I can pick your brain a little bit, you know, from what you know, again, you know, Melissa is not exactly 60-year-old. She's only been doing HR for 10, 12 years, right? 10, 12 years, right?
Yep.
Sure. So from what you know, Melissa, and what you've learned, and your own sort of, you know, curiosity out there as well, this whole thing of a formal performance review, really, do you believe in it? Do you recommend it? And what is it, and what's the value of it? So if you recommend it, why a company should have formal? And maybe to be fair to you, should maybe make it more of a niche. saying for a large company, you work for large companies,
Yes.
constructions, etc. You said.
Yes.
So let's say 1,000 people company. Do you recommend they would do a formal yearly performance review, and why?
Yes. And the reason I say that is you want to make sure that people are paid fairly and rewarded for their performance.
You keep saying that, which is I so respect. And I remember you put that in the email that when you replied to my thing, and I really respect that, the fairly thing. Can you elaborate it? Because I really respect you for that, because you keep saying you seemed really passionate about this element of it. So you're saying if that performance review is leading to some kind of remuneration, you want to make sure it's accurate because you want to be fair to people, which is such a noble thing. And for you to be passionate about it, it says a lot about you as a person. I really respect it. So can you just elaborate to people a little bit about that and maybe give us some examples how it can go wrong otherwise?
Yeah, I have seen it go wrong, and that's why I feel so strongly about it. You know, people work and choose their line of work or their career because they're looking for something. I mean, the basic Maslow's hierarchy, if they're going for a job, they want to be paid correctly and fairly. So it's for me, it's so basic, but it's so important. If you muck up someone's pay, regardless of how many benefits or pizzas or whatever you order, you're not going to be happy. So if people are going above and beyond and they are performing, there's no better way to get an employee offside if you reward them the same increase as the person sitting next to them who slacks off, comes in late, and isn't held accountable, and they get the same increase. So that's why I just think the fixed rate or the let's give everyone the same approach is just so wrong, because you're diminishing the extra effort or the intangibles that people do if they look at an email on the weekend because they love their job and they love their company. That just gets diminished. So that's why I think if you're going to have a formal performance process, that it is linked to performance and it's merit based. It's not based on how long someone's been there or because they're best mates with the CEO. It's based on what have they delivered, how has their performance been against the cohort.
Okay.
And it's done in a structured way.
I was going to give you plenty of oxygen there to talk about this point. So that's what I'm going to now focus us on this aspect of it. So you're saying the fairness, you want that formal performance review, or one of the reasons why you want it is to make sure there's fairness of the rewards and recognition. Is that the right words to use in this concept?
Yes,
rewards
that's
and
perfect.
recognition. So the increase is a reward. Can you say an increase is a reward?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, cool. So the rewards and the recognition needs to be fair. That's one aspect of what you want, why you should have the yearly performance review, the formal performance review. And therefore, if we focus on that point, that fairness aspect of the pay increase, for example, make it really niche point. Exactly, we're discussing this aspect of it. How would you structure that performance review, that formal performance review, to maximize your chances of getting it right, maximize that fairness aspect of the pay increase? What elements would you have in it to give you that best chance at being fair there?
So now I was talking about the bell curve.
Yeah.
So if you have people and their rating puts them underperforming or not meeting expectations, they either aren't eligible for an increase. Let's say the criteria is, have they been disciplined in the last 12 months? Well, if that's a tick and they have, then they don't get an increase because that's sending the wrong message. We're not giving you a pay rise if you have been disciplined or sexually harassed someone, whatever it is. So you're keeping the messaging consistent. So you have that in place before you start. Then you might say there's a range. If people are meeting expectation, they're doing a good job, you look at CPI, you look at inflation, right? The last 12 months, 4.5% is the average inflation. People in that bucket get that. Then you look at the people who are exceeding expectation and you might have a little bit of playroom. And the reason I say you want to have a range is because if you're looking at your pool of people in your team, sometimes, and it is an unfortunate reality, it does happen, you have long-term loyal employees who get their percentage increase, assuming that they do every year, and they get their little bump, but the market changes. So the salary increases aren't contingent on CPI.
Mm.
So sometimes long-term employees can fall behind, and it's not right to have an employee who's doing their job, doing really well,
Mm.
sitting next to an employee who's just been hired and the new employee is receiving $20,000 more.
It's unbelievable.
So those regular formal performance reviews give you an opportunity to review all of that and say, you know what, we're going to use the extra bucket of money or extra percentage that these people on the low end of the bell curve aren't getting because it's the right thing to do. And we're going to use that allocated to these people as a pay parity exercise. So it's a win-win.
Yeah.
You use those opportunities to bump and rectify the people who should be paid, equalize, but then you also reward the people who are performing and performing.
Mm.
That's why I feel very strongly about it, because I have seen it go wrong when people don't do the right thing and they get the same increase. And as much as you tell people, don't talk about what you're on, people talk about what they're on. Employees share, they say, hey, what increase did you get? You know, so you have to assume people are going to know and employees are going to share. So if a manager is worried, or a CEO or whoever is worried about people telling, then they've probably made the wrong decision. They probably have a reason to be worried that people are going to talk about it. So it's important to bear that in mind.
Okay. Very, very, very interesting. So, in terms of that, I've never worked. I was a developer. So I started my career, and then pretty much, and then started Martian Logic. So I've never worked in an environment where there's, for example, awards based and stuff. So I really know a little bit about it through our clients. A lot of our clients are, whether it's in aged care or NDIS or schools, etc. And I've learned a lot about it, but I still, baby steps really in terms of what I know. So how does it work? Someone is on level 1 or whatever. Do they go to that level 2 based on how many years they've been doing that job automatically, or can the performance review impact that in an awards sort of context? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it depends on the awards. So some awards are yearly based. So a good example is, say, apprenticeship. There might be in the construction award, year 1 apprentices get X amount of dollars per week. And as they progress through the apprenticeship, it just is purely related to what year they're in to study. Really simple, really easy.
Got it.
But when it comes to, say, other classifications, it can be a range of different things. So it could be the scope of their work. It could be their skill set. It could be a mix of qualification, skill set, and experience. And that's how they're assigned to the different classification. And sometimes it's actually a combination of the both. It could be year-based.
So they do review after, let's say, a year, and they take all that in consideration. They say, therefore, we're going to now move you to that level or not?
That's right.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
And for some of the EBAs or enterprise bargaining agreements I've written, I've gone one step further and said, and I've actually put it into the enterprise agreement, this is the matrix, skills matrix for each job classification. So if you would like to be bumped from, say, grade 1 to grade 2.
So you know what you need to learn.
This is what you need to learn. These are the gaps. And then here's a form, fill it out. The manager will assess your abilities and then see if you've met the criteria or not to get bumped. So it just goes back to transparency.
Exactly, the whole job description and transparency. And letting them know a year before or more what they need to do to become a blah, and hold them accountable and manage them against it. How they're going with that.
They've got a career path, and if they want to get that extra $10 an hour, whatever it is, they know exactly what they need to do to get that.
And hence that whole goals and
that's
whatever
right.
and all that. That's sort of, a lot of people bring that into performance management, and we take it seriously as well. Okay, one last topic when it related to that word, the goal setting. With performance management, some of our clients, as we've been developing the product, someone basically said, "Oh, we don't do any of this. We just do goal discussions, goal setting." So the manager and the employee, they set up the goals and stuff. It's a goal discussion. They made it all about these goals. And we go, oh, we were taken aback a little bit by this. We go, oh, it's got to be some kind of measurable thing here. What is performance? Unless, we were aware that there's so many types of performance management. So we thought maybe some kind of weird type of performance management that we haven't come across yet. That's all just based on these goals. They sit down, decide what they want to do before the next meeting, and they measure against that, which is actually doesn't sound that bad anyway.
Yeah.
What do you know about that? The importance of the goal setting in the context of performance management, both for an employee to have an input into it, as well as the manager, and for which type of performance management this is well suited or more suited. The weekly catch up, the 360 review, the formal performance management, etc., etc. Where do you feel that becomes more important to or for? And how does it actually work? Just maybe if you know much about this topic, just explain to people what that is.
Well, goal setting can be used so broadly. So within the context of performance management, and I mentioned the SMART acronym earlier.
Yep.
A lot of organizations use it because it just helps frame the goal. And a lot of employees now write in ChatGPT, write me a SMART goal on this. Just pumps it out and helps them. But the SMART acronym is being about specific, so have the specificity around what do you want to do.
Yep.
It needs to be measurable, so you can hold it, people to account. Is it attainable?
Yep.
So setting the benchmark, is it too high, is it too low, whatever. It needs to be absolutely relevant.
What's the R stand for?
Relevant.
Relevant. So repeat that for me. SMART, S for specific, M for measurable,
attainable, relevant, and T is for time bound.
Okay.
We're going to achieve all of these things, but within
when.
So it just helps frame the goal, and so it's very clear, and you can hold people.
So
to
that's
account.
very important, people. There's a lot of frameworks out there or paradigms, and this is one of them. When you're setting up KPIs, it's called SMART, capital SMART. Yeah, very interesting. And so this whole goal setting thing, the way this particular client, we respect them a lot, very, very smart people, but they said, performance review for us is all about the employee and the manager setting up the goals for the next performance review, and then they measure that, and then in that session, they set up the goals for the next one, which we implemented it within the product. It's now a feature. You can do that as much as you want. It's your heart's content. As a matter of fact, we automated it where literally like a flag, you just, do you want that feature there? And we do all the heavy lifting for you. We make it now, when you want to start to talk about that, you can just keep adding. And then when it comes to the next meeting, it's there. You've got to review what you've created. We made it so easy, but I'm not interested in the feature. That's technology. It can come and go. People implement it in a million ways. I'm not worried about that. What is the idea behind it? Why is it important? Speaking back about, the whole purpose of performance management and why is it useful, what's the idea behind that whole goal setting thing? Keep it sort of fluid like that. Why is it important?
It's just a really great way to understand what you're doing, where you're going, and why you're going there.
So in my weekly catch-up, can I introduce that?
You can tie it in with if you have yearly goals, right? What are you working on right now to achieve that yearly goal? Because they could be distracted to be like, this client is really angry and, they want me to develop this new policy. Sure, but how does that get you to that goal? So that's where the R comes in into how is that relevant to achieving this goal? So it puts everything into perspective.
Okay.
There's so many distractions.
Let's just explain it to a 5-year-old like myself about in this topic.
Yeah.
I'm doing a weekly catch-up, and I was making a claim before that it's adequate enough to just make that focused around what level of commitment have you had this week, what level of focus have you had this week, and then it's how did you meet your KPIs? What percentage did you end? It's just a completion rate of your task completion rate. What was your rate there?
Yeah.
So I was making a claim that it's probably adequate enough to keep it simple. 3 questions, literally reflecting that. And we're now saying, look, it would be good to introduce also this whole goal setting within that. How would it come? Let's see if we can make it in, how do we incorporate it in here?
Yeah.
So,
So just using that same example. So if you're focusing on the tasks, the focus, commitment, anything else, let's say the ultimate goal is to make sure this employee or the team is averaging 75 to 90% completion.
completion rate. Yeah.
That could be the goal. So that could be your SMART goal if that's what you want to achieve. So that's how you could link it in to see, well, are we getting there? Yeah, I mean, every week this person's on 75 and up, or this person's at 110%. This person's kicking goals.
I know, but they're saying they want every week to the employee to write a bunch of goals themselves. Is it maybe sub goals of this? I mean, what are we saying here? What are they saying? We still didn't understand what they meant in that meeting. We were all taken aback a little bit. As I said, we have the tool, we have the feature there, but this fluidity, as if they want the employee on a weekly basis or a month, whenever they catch up, to set their own goals.
No,
Do you know
I
much
think
about that?
no, I think kind of to what I said.
If you Google it, you'll find some people believe in that.
I think that's too much. I think people's attention span is, if you have a long meeting, they can only focus on really 3 key things. They'll only have 3 key takeaways and that's it.
Especially when it's every week.
Exactly. It's too much.
Spend an hour every week on that. I'm expecting this to be, I said to my people, if we're going to implement this, 7 minutes. At 4:30, 7 minutes, done.
So doing goal setting every week is overkill. Particularly if you're doing it using SMART. No wonder people use ChatGPT. But it would be too much. I mean, that's why SMART goals are set. Once a year, you check in at the 6-month mark, then the 12-month mark. But if you're having weekly catch-ups, meeting those 3 criteria, then stick to that framework or formula or whatever it would be. But if you want to link it into the broader goal, you can do that. That's fine. But don't overkill it with asking employees to sit down and think about, what's my goal this week?
Yeah.
Because that's when the quality really declines. They go, oh, that's too much.
Yeah. I can only see it, and I totally agree with you, but I can only see it if what they meant would be like the low level details of that role. So for example, speaking of the task completion, and the fact that I want to get my task completion to 110%, I want to really overachieve. This is my goal. So then maybe for this week, what do I think the couple of things I need to do differently to get there? Maybe I'll set a couple of things. For example, I want to be able to say no to when my peers or people from outside my team particularly come and ask me for things. To maybe be able to have the more of a courage to say to them, look, I'm really sorry. I've got something to finish for my supervisor by 3 p.m. I can't talk to you now. Can we talk? Maybe call me after 5 or something.
Yeah.
So maybe they set up their own things about how they feel, their own personality and environment. They can make themselves more successful. Does that make sense, do you think, in that context?
Yeah. I mean, people can set their own personal goals. So that's more the personal goals. So it could be, I want to finish a course by the end of the year or whatever it is, or I want to develop my assertiveness, which is what you just spoke to, my ability to say no politely and set boundaries so that they can achieve and get that focus that they want. So that's something they can definitely do, but to expect an employee to do that every week, that's a big ask. It's a real big ask. And that would be exhausting. After 6 months of doing that every week, you run out of things to say.
And that 7 minutes will turn into an hour.
Oh, it would really drag on.
Can you imagine, even if a manager they're not business competent people, they could be the best people, but they're not business competent. What I mean by that, it's probably hard to explain. But what I mean by that is they're afraid to write really what the question is. Oh, is that going to be legal? Can I say that? Can I let them say that? Oh, it turns into a drama, an hour or 2.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yes. Yeah.
Let
Usually that comes to me.
Exactly. Oh, I want to talk to HR first. I want to talk to Anwar first.
Yeah.
It becomes a nightmare.
I get it. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
You know what? I think we've covered so much. Is there anything else you would like to say about either of the 2 topics? First of all, about your passion for HR and as a career for young people. That's we started with that topic, and I really appreciated you sort of enlightening me a little bit about how interesting the HR career for a young person and how it sets them up for success going forward, even if they want to then go into something else, or the performance management or HR in general. Is there anything else you'd like to, you feel you want to get out there?
Yeah, no, I'd love to firstly just thank you for allowing me the
You're
opportunity,
welcome.
because I think uh, when you're in school, you have a career advisor, and as controversial as this might sound, you have a career advisor, and usually they go to university, they get their career counselling degree, and then they end up back in high school. So in terms of the guidance and the scope of the advice and what they offer you, it can be very limited or limiting. You know, they might say, you're good at history, you should be an archaeologist. I actually had that conversation with my career advisor and said, I love ancient history, but I don't want to be an archaeologist. And that's not why I like ancient history. I like ancient history because it teaches you lessons of the past.
Absolutely. Same with me.
Yes. So
Yes.
I love it. It's fascinating. And history has a tendency to repeat itself, unfortunately. But just the guidance wasn't there. And I think if people understand what HR truly is, you can really kind of unwind the stigma and what actually happens behind the curtain. Because like I said, it's got a veil of confidentiality, and people sometimes really don't know what we do.
Yeah.
And rightfully so, because there is a lot of work in the background. There is a lot of influencing and persuading, but it can be a very rewarding career.
Yeah.
That's the positive side of it. But they need to understand that it can be quite lonely and it can be quite taxing.
Lonely? Why is that? Because you're perceived as the police or something? Maybe employees don't trust you or something because they fear you? Is that the loneliness?
It can be, that's one element. But imagine if you're a HR person, you need to be neutral. You can't be friends with employees. You can't build those personal connections you'd like to outside of work, because the next day,
boundaries,
that's right, the next day you could be asked to terminate their employment or make them redundant, and you need to be able to advise on a completely objective
a bit like
plane.
The CEO, I guess. I find that my in my career, I'm a bit lonely as well.
It is very lonely. It gets lonelier as you go up to the top. But HR generally can be quite lonely. You can have those open conversations if you're at a broader HR team. You've got that HR support.
Got it.
But
if
outside,
it's small business on your own,
business, very, very lonely.
That's a lesson. Thank you for saying that. Not only in the context, rightly so, in terms of your advice to a young person, which is so on point, but even it's a lesson for CEOs like me, who we don't have yet, 5 people in the HR team, to maybe check on those HR people and take them out to lunches and sit down with them and be their friend a little bit, because their job can be lonely. Maybe they don't know that. So that's maybe a bit of a reminder for those managing directors and CEOs of smaller companies.
That's right. And I think that's why for CEOs, they like to have a very strong HR person by their side. So usually the go-to sounding board, check-in. CEOs could just want to bounce an idea off that's completely irrelevant to HR, but because they know that there's that baseline level of trust and confidentiality, that they could say whatever they need to and it won't leave the room.
Yes.
That can be really helpful, particularly when you don't have a lot of people to talk to, because you are at the top and you've got a board to report to. You need to keep it all together. And that's why it's important that people understand that's what HR is. It's demanding.
So just to rewind a little, you're saying it's very rewarding. You 100% recommend it, but you're saying a bit of a warning here. It can be lonely, and something else that could be negative. What was it? Lonely and?
It's lonely and very demanding. It can be very emotionally taxing. So, there's this idea.
Like, for example, terminating someone.
Yeah, and it's if you're not used to doing it, or during the pandemic, there was so many different decisions to be made, and it's hard to not feel for people, particularly if you're going through that day in, day out. So you need to be able to separate yourself without losing your humanity, essentially. So you need to do it in a personal way, but it can be hard to not bring that home with you. So when you couple that with the loneliness, the confidentiality. You might know the most exciting thing is happening in the next couple of weeks for the company, but you can't talk to anybody about it.
Yeah.
You have to keep it to yourself. So that's hard too.
Yeah.
Because it's so exciting, or someone's getting promoted and you've helped influence that, but you also don't get the credit because it was the manager, it was the CEO who made the decision. It wasn't HR.
Got it.
So it can be thankless, it can be lonely, it can be very emotionally demanding. However, very rewarding.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. Actually, I've got one more question.
Yeah.
We can talk about, educate me about, and everybody else who doesn't know. The word, so our amazing clients, people like yourself, you look at their email signatures. Some people use the word HR, some people use people and culture. Some people use, I don't know, there's a few variations now. A chief people officer now, which started to see even that title.
Yes.
So, but what I would love for you, what's the difference between people and culture and HR?
It's funny you raise this. I had this conversation this morning.
Okay.
So it's fresh on mind.
Awesome.
And I took a very measured view. So the reason I like HR and prefer HR, because when you're comparing that against, say, a P&C, people and culture title, it puts the onus on the HR person to own people and culture. But that's not HR's role. HR's role is there to help guide leaders, help guide the CEO to make the right decisions to build the culture. But what I found is that when you have an organization and the HR practitioners are called people and culture, the expectation is different. The expectation is it's their job to make sure people are engaged. If people aren't engaged, it's HR's fault, and it really turns the rhetoric. So,
oh my God, I like it.
So even though
I can see the nuance there. I can see it.
So that's my view.
Yeah.
Other people have different views. So that's my school of thought. But the reason I view it that way is
you're not policing it. You're providing the advice and the knowledge and the wisdom to those managers and leaders to be real leaders and to aspire and develop the right culture.
Exactly. But if you put it in the title, it's like a signal to say, well, people and culture sits with them. It's not me. It's on them. And that's not right.
Yeah.
That's not what they're there for.
I like it. I like that distinction. Thanks for sharing that. On this note, you are amazing.
Oh,
thank you very much. I've learned a lot, and I'm very, very sure a lot of people will say the same. So thank you very much, Melissa. It was lovely to meet you in person, and thank you for sharing.
Thank you.
Good.
Had
Talk
fun.
to you soon.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
All righty.